Us up toys. I'd love to formally welcome everyone to this program in celebration of Homecoming Week at Penn and in celebration of National First Gen Week. So it is a national event that takes place throughout the country where universities and other institutions celebrate being first gen. So if you search for that hashtag this week, you might find a lot of great and inspirational content. I'd love to also thank all of our partners, the FGLI Program, the Greenfield Intercultural Center, the Office of Penn First Plus, and of course, Alumni Relations. In my unit, Penn First Plus Alumni, I am the Director of Penn First Plus Alumni and Career Resources Initiatives, and really looking forward to spending this time with you all. We're gonna have some great stories, hopefully some great conversation. Send in your questions and comments in the chat, but I'll give it to Valerie De Cruz, the Director of the Greenfield Intercultural Center, to introduce us to our lovely MC. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? Okay. All right. Well, as you can see, I have a fabulous team. I want to thank Lisette, Toys, Kia, and Andrea. Every day, we work very closely together to advance the needs of highly aided students and to work collectively across all of our new departments. This is such a special moment for us, celebrating First Gen Week, because it is part of a student movement that got us here. Before I talk about ANIA, I want to first say I'm so pleased to join Lisette in welcoming Yulia, Cindy, and Rafael. Rafael, I haven't had the pleasure of getting to know you, and I hope to do so. But Yulia and Cindy are dear to my heart. They each have really pushed us at Penn to think seriously about a whole host of issues, right? So I'm delighted that they're here with Rafael to share their stories. I wrote some things down about ANIA because I know that if I start talking extemporaneously about ANIA, I'm going to get very emotional and I might miss some things. I'm not going to go into extraordinary detail about her. We can share her bio. You can read about her amazing accomplishments. I want to say a few things because I want to get to the program. ANIA, as you know, graduated from Penn. She graduated with a BA in sociology and urban studies and a couple other concentrations and so on. I think it was law, and she will tell us what the other one was. But she also, in addition, many of you may have followed her journey. You've read about it, right? Penn has promoted her journey extensively, and she will speak to that. So you have followed her journey and her amazing accomplishments. You may know she's a Rhodes Scholar. She's a Truman Scholar. She's also a dual master's degree. She's pursuing a dual master's at Oxford University. She told me she just completed her Master's of Science in Comparative Social Policy, and she's currently completing a second master's in Public Policy at Oxford. But here's the thing, what I most admire about ANIA is her single-minded focus on empowering individuals and communities. Even while she has accumulated awards and accomplishments, she remains steadfast in her insistence that we focus on what truly matters. Hence your stories. We focus on what truly matters. She is also a compassionate but fierce critic of the status quo. And it is precisely because of that we are delighted that she's leading this program. She helps us cut through the noise to remind us of what is truly important. I am personally really blessed to be in community with her because she keeps me grounded on what we need to be laser focused on if we truly want justice in this country. And it is her and your stories, Yulia, Cindy, Raphael. These are the stories that will keep us grounded and focused. I'm now going to turn it over to Ania.
Hi, everyone. Just before I begin, I want to say, Val, thank you for that great introduction. Just being very real with everyone here. We were emailing back and forth about an hour ago, and I just told her, I trust whatever you say. I don't need to give you 2 sentences. And this is exactly why I trust her. She captures definitely everything that I believe in. And just thank you so much. So just once again, want to welcome everyone to this great event tonight. Before I begin, just want to put one firm reminder out there that you guys can, it should be on the right side of your screen like it's on mine, but you can share all of your reactions and questions in the chat throughout the event. It's just an opportunity for all of us to be in community with each other while, our speakers are speaking. And at the end of the storytelling portion of this, there will of course be a Q&A for everyone to share their thoughts, reactions, and questions, and for storytellers and myself to also, just talk back and, to just share and create community. I'll give a brief introduction of sort of kind of my story and myself, just very quickly. As you know, some of you may have heard, I came to Penn at 18 years old. I had been born and raised in Philadelphia. My father had just passed away about 6 months before I started at Penn. I was bright and young-eyed, and when anyone asked me what I wanted to do, I just told them that I wanted to help people. I didn't have much more to say other than that. After about 2 months of my journey into Penn, my mom passed away, and I had a lot of tough choices to make. As Val said, when folks often hear my story, and even in Dr. Gutman's 2019 commencement address, when she told my story, she often begins here. She often begins at when my mother and father died. And a lot of folks after that will go and conceptualize it as this big story of triumph. She picked herself back up. She went on and she did this, this, and this. She became a Truman Scholar, a Rhodes Scholar, and now she's at Oxford, et cetera, et cetera. And for a while, I told my story in that same way too, often conceptualizing my life wins in terms of awards and other external validations and grounding them in the lows of death. But the truth is that that's not where my story began. I was born a little Black girl in West Philadelphia with parents who loved her and who were alive and poured every fiber of their being into me. My grandma taught me to read and write on her West Philadelphia porch just a half a mile away from 61st and Osage Avenue, where 13 people, including 5 children, were murdered by the city of Philadelphia in 1865. I grew up in the Penrose School in Southwest Philadelphia, where in 6th grade, when I was just 11 years old, city police came in and did a random search of all of us one morning, patting each one of us down from head to toe to prepare us for what our future could be like. After I moved on from that school, I moved on to the best high school in the city. It is also the most segregated high school in the city, decreasing its Black population from approximately 40% to 15% in a city that's 45% Black in just the last 3 years alone. I was frequently during my time in that school told to go back to where I came from, to go back to the hood, that I did not belong there. During my first summer at Penn, the summer after my freshman year, while eating in Houston Hall, I ran into one of my elementary school classmates who I hadn't seen in quite a while, and it was such a strange encounter. Here I was buying some $10 salad that I didn't even know the name of, probably 2 years before that, from a young lady that I went to school with, that I had been friends with in grade school, who was now serving me and probably being paid the minimum wage without benefits by a Penn contractor for doing so. And I often think about Caroline's story, about how our stories intersect, about how our stories differ. And in her talk, Adichi tells us this danger of one story becoming the only story that is told. And I think about how much my story is told in the Penn community and the Philadelphia community at large as something to pay attention to, but I often also think about whose stories are being erased, what parts of my story are being erased or told less. And I think about the reclaiming of my story and people's place, and particularly my people's place in it. Over our time together, I just ask you all to think through this one thing. How do we conceptualize the stories of those around us? How do we conceptualize our own stories? And what are we erasing and what are we highlighting? And with that, I'm very happy to introduce Cindy Rintala as our first storyteller. Just a brief introduction. Cindy Rintala is a 1991 graduate of Wharton and the College of Arts and Sciences, where she majored in finance and accounting. She is also a 1997 Wharton MBA grad. Cindy's had a long career in finance and is also the founder and CEO of Rise First, a resource hub and online community for FGLI students across the country. And she joins us from the New York City area.
Wow, thank you, Ania. That was such a powerful story, and thank you for the lovely intro. And welcome to homecoming, and happy First Gen Week. It's no coincidence that we, having this session during the First Gen Week. I'm grateful and for Penn to host an event like this, for all of us to come together and share our story. Stories such as Ania's, it just needs to be told and shared and repeated, because there are many people in this room and also around the world, so that they do not feel alone. We all have our journeys, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to share my story. So it's truly an honor to be here tonight and to be part of this panel of speakers. As you can imagine, I love hearing different stories, FGLI stories, and though we have some common threads, we each have our own FGLI journey and FGLI stories. As a group, we're generally pretty diverse, actually, right? What connects us as a group, it's actually our spirit of striving to, make a better life for ourselves, for our family, for our community, striving to gain more opportunity, access to more opportunities, striving to create a more equitable society, and also striving to make a difference, to make an impact. As we talk to more students and sharing our stories, hopefully that makes a little difference in someone's life. So as the FGLI alum and mentor to many FGLI students and professionals, I often feel that, a lot of times our focus about our story, it's about challenges that we face, the obstacles that we overcome, the imposter syndromes, lack of social capital, food insecurities on campus. Talking and addressing these issues is so important so that no one feels alone. This is the reason that I'm so proud and grateful for, our team at GIC and, Penn First Plus team to put this event together, and for working with our students and alums every single day. They're on the field and doing this on a daily basis. But tonight, I want to spend and take this opportunity to talk about, how our FGLI background and upbringing can be a strength and asset in our life and our career. In my view, there are several key building blocks of success in life: resilience, grit, adaptability to change, resourcefulness, problem solving, and also our intellectual curiosity. Many of these are actually firmly rooted in our FGLI background and upbringing, and they become who we are, based on the way we grew up. Personally, so my American dream began when I was 9 years old. My parents moved from mainland China to Hong Kong as a first stop to the US. You know, when I moved to Hong Kong, it was such a culture shock. It was real and intense. It was my first time to taste, you know, Coca-Cola, first time to saw anyone other than Asian. That was when I was 9 years old, never met anyone other than Asian. First time I saw any skyscrapers, you know. I remember those, you know, pictures vividly as it happened yesterday. 4 years later, I remember arriving at JFK middle of the night with my parents. My parents had $300 in their pocket. We didn't speak any English, and they were already in their early 40s to take the journey to settle in a foreign land. That was tremendous bravery and courage. They worked really hard in the beginning at my uncle's restaurant, 15 hours a day, 364 days a year. You know, my parents saved every single penny so that my brother and I can have the American dream. Despite some of our hard work, initially, we truly were just trying to stay afloat. There are just so many challenges that we had to overcome being a new immigrant to the country, but we had no cushion, no backstop. We have to make it, you know. I will help them after school, coming back from school, and take orders, chopping vegetables, serving our customers. I will only start to work on my homework after we get home around 11 p.m. So that was my early days in the United States. To achieve my dream of higher education, I could not have done it without the help of my high school English teacher, Mrs. Rosemary Cowan. From the beginning, she took me under her wing. I spent my first Thanksgiving dinner with her family. She took me to see my first Broadway show called Big River. She even drove me to Penn for my on-campus interview. She helped me with my college applications and financial aid packages. I didn't know how to navigate if it's not for her. When I finally arrived on campus at Penn in the fall of 1987, I remember feeling both a sense of excitement and a complete loss. I'd never been away from home. We never had a vacation, you know, at that time. Never seen a big lecture hall. Never heard of office hour or fraternity parties. Never, you know, had so many activities to choose from. It was overwhelming, you know, but I drew on my previous experience of adjustment, you know, moving from country to country. I reminded myself to be patient, to branch out of my comfort zone and make friends from different backgrounds with different interests. So slowly, you know, I met my Penn roommate, Lynn Satine from Long Island, and my other roommate, Veronica Zamora from Texas, from San Antonio, Texas. We became three amigos ever since. They truly make my Penn experience more remarkable. I also met my husband actually at Penn, you know, at a fraternity party nonetheless. You know, academically, aside from our traditional intro courses, I took a chance and registered for a Japanese class where I met my lifelong friend, Catherine Montrone. And, you know, these connections and people that I met at Penn, they are my lifelong friends to today. They're my bedrock for everything that I go through in my life. Fast forward a few years, when my friend Catherine that I mentioned connected me to a job at an investment banking firm in Tokyo, I jumped at the opportunity. This actually marked my third overseas trip, but this time I was much more used to the changes and became quite resourceful. So despite feeling really anxious about my lack of Japanese language ability and not knowing anyone in Japan, I knew I had to establish my personal brand quickly at work if I had to become effective. I ask a lot of questions. I invite my colleagues out for lunch so that I can get a better understanding of the corporate culture, especially in Japan. I worked really hard to gain the trust of my boss and colleagues, to expand my social circle and give back to the community. I joined a non-for-profit organization called Foreign Executive Women, FEW, and met some amazing friends. We even organized the first walkathon in Japan, in Tokyo, to give back to the community. So over the years, one thing I learned about that is constant is actually change. In 2020, at the height of the internet bubble, I moved again once more from New York to San Francisco to join Charles Schwab as a marketing director. And I was so excited about the new opportunity after 6 months. And unbeknown to all of us, the internet bubble burst. And once again, I faced another challenge. We actually had a zero budget for marketing. As a marketing director, that was really hard initially. I could be really deflated, and with the expectation of joining a growing organization and company. But I reflect on how resourceful my parents were in the early days in the US. So quickly I rose up to the challenge and created what we call $0 marketing initiative, leveraging Charles Schwab's branch network, which is the existing asset for account acquisition and to engage with our customers. So no matter what kind of new job, new positions, reorganizations that I experienced in my corporate career or new projects, with each change, I really credit my FGLI background and upbringing for resilience, for resourcefulness, for adaptability to change. And as I work with many FGLI students and alums, they also share similar stories. One student I work with shared that her mom would have to collect, recycling cans to earn extra money to help her stay in school. Another one had to come up with $5,000 by herself in order to move herself from Philadelphia to San Francisco for her first full-time job. Yet another lost a parent, his dad, while dealing with school closure during COVID-19. Each one of them found a way to move forward, one step at a time. These stories are truly inspiring and motivate me to move forward and help other students along the way. As you can imagine, all of us, have stories, have so many chapters in our life journey and stories. After 25 years working in financial services and fintech, I continue to write my new chapters in my life story. After mentoring many, students and alums, I found an organization called Rise First. So there's a slide on screen here for you guys to take a look. It is a non-for-profit organization to help empower first-generation low-income students and professionals nationwide. We're hoping that with this resource and website, we curated 1,200 scholarships and resources for faculty, students, and professionals across the nation. Through our social media channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, we also provide advice, tips, and career opportunities for students across the board. More importantly, our organization is built for and by faculty, students, and professionals, and many of them are Penn students. So I'm always pride myself to think that, you know, a couple of years ago when we found this organization, I, you know, recruited 3 Penn students to help with this passion project, and our passion project is all of our, you know, 20 plus core team members are volunteers with faculty backgrounds, and it is my strong belief that we, as, you know, faculty, students, and professionals, we can help each other to lift up and close the achievement gap for the next generation of faculty leaders. So to all the faculty, students, and alums on this call, because of your faculty background, you already have the key building blocks or ingredients for a successful and fulfilling life. Just remember that no one can do this alone. To activate the ingredients in your life is simply trying to ask for help, you know, so please reach out and ask for help. At the same time, you know, we should also reach back and hold someone up the ladder along the way. And you never know who might, you know, who you might help impact. It really could be someone just like me, you know. And I want to thank the Penn team here, Ania, and, you know, everyone here on the call to allow me to share my story. And I'll encourage all of you to share yours as well.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I really, you know, just sort of kind of resonated with different parts of your story, particularly around Penn being a very new place, and just how, you know, we have to navigate it as FGLI students and really draw from our backgrounds to do, you know, just different things during our time here and during the time after. Moving this all along, next I would like to introduce our next storyteller, Rafael Hernandez. He is a 1993 graduate of the School of Engineering, where he majored in civil engineering. Rafael is currently the Vice President of Liquefied Natural Gas, and he joins us from Houston, Texas.
Yes, thank you, Ania. Good evening, everybody. As stated, my name is Rafael Hernandez, and I graduated from School of Engineering and Applied Science more than 27 years ago. As per the title of this forum, it goes without saying, I was the first in my family to go to college, and from a family with limited financial resources. First, let me tell you a bit about my journey and how I ended up at Penn in the fall of 1989. It all started with my parents. My mother, a Mexican-American, daughter of migrant workers, raised in Mexico from a very young age, and with a 6th grade education. And my father, a Mexican orphan, who only had 3 months of formal education. My father was self-taught, and to this day has had a never-ending passion for learning. His favorite pastime has always been composing songs and writing poems, something he continues to this day at 78 years old. Although they both had 2 or 3 jobs at any one time, they still make time to attend classes at the local high school to learn English. With their backgrounds, I really don't know or how or when my parents brainwashed us, but as long as I can remember, my 2 brothers and I always knew we would be attending college. It was not an option, it was an expectation. In our family, we all had responsibilities at home and worked odd jobs, not necessarily for money, but to learn a trade, craftily arranged by our father. But school was always priority 1. Our number 1 objective was to earn an academic scholarship to assist with college costs. However, they were not helicopter parents by any means. They didn't ask us if we had completed our homework or asked to see our report cards. They were too busy working, but they never missed the parent-teacher conference. They just made it work because of our education was that important to them. Their only constant advice was always that we could achieve anything we aspired to by working hard and to believe in oneself. Consequently, not only did we excel in academics and athletics, but we had perfect attendance, participated in multiple extracurricular activities, and held leadership positions. As I stated before, they brainwashed us to believe we were the best, and we never questioned it because we felt unbeatable. Prior to senior year, although I was working during the summer at the same place where my parents worked, and I had worked during the past few summer and winter breaks, my father once again arranged for me to work for no pay for a neighbor who had a mechanic shop. At this point, in addition to a mechanic helper, I had already been a plumber and an electrician helper. I was never thrilled with those arrangements. So I asked my dad why he kept on making them if I wasn't going to get paid. His simple response was, "You might not be earning money today, but you are learning a skill for a lifetime." At that moment, I realized that my parents had a vision to provide me with multiple options for my future, all better than what they had. I could either choose a trade and work with my hands, or use my brain and be the first one in the family to go to college. By exposing me to well-respected manual work, they were also empowering me to strive for other opportunities. I had options and it was my choice. And thanks to my parents, I had a toolbox. In my toolbox, I had the concept of hard work. During senior year in high school, I knew I would be applying to colleges, but I really did not have any guidance. So my plan, well, if you really want to call it that, was simply to apply to all the state flagship universities and local universities. I only knew of one private elite university, and that was only because that is where the daughter of the owner of a very nice restaurant where I work went to college. I dreamed of attending the university because it sounded so prestigious. Once I obtained the application, I realized I needed some recommendations. So I went to one of my favorite teachers who I respected very much and had taken 3 of his classes throughout high school. And I thought he was one of the smartest people I had ever met. When I asked if he would write me a recommendation, he was surprised, but not in a good way. He wanted to tell me that he applied to that school himself and that he was not accepted, and for me to reconsider. That revelation shattered my dream. If this teacher who I admire so much didn't get accepted, what was I thinking? To make a long story short, deflated, I decided not to apply. My high school was an inner city school. Guidance counselors were on campus not to provide college counseling, but to try to keep the majority of students from dropping out or staying out of trouble. The group of students were even thinking beyond high school, and attending college was a fraction of the senior class. One day, one of my best friends and a football teammate told me about a small school, well, small compared to the Texas state schools, that had recruited him to play football. He told me that it was in Philadelphia, it had an awesome campus, and I might even get an opportunity to try out and continue playing football in college. The possibility really excited me, and he encouraged me to apply. So I did. To this day, I still clearly remember the moment, sitting at the dinner table when I told my parents that I wanted to attend Penn, but that I needed to pay a portion of the cost. At the time, I had multiple full-ride scholarships to other schools. Remember, as I stated, that had always been objective number one in our family. However, without hesitation, they both responded that if that is what I wanted to do, they would support me 100% with my decision and not to worry about the money, which I knew we didn't have. So in the fall of 1989, full of enthusiasm, I boarded a plane and traveled the more than 1,500 miles from hot and humid Houston, Texas to cold Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This was the longest trip I had ever taken and the farthest I had been from my parents. I arrived on campus earlier than other students, but not to attend a camp or orientation. I was there to attend football practice. I had communicated with the coach of the lightweight football team, known today as spring football, and I was given an opportunity to try out, and not only did I make the varsity team, but I earned a starting spot. This in itself provided a nice transition to the Penn, since on day one, I had the opportunity to meet a large group of people, lower and upperclassmen that shared a similar interest. I really enjoyed traveling for away games and visiting other campuses in the Northeast, such as Cornell, West Point, Navy, Princeton, and others. Even though I was a first generation and low income student, there was no such distinction at Penn, back in those days. I never felt like I didn't belong at Penn. I guess I still had a sense of invincibility that my parents had instilled in me, where I was just naive. I proceeded to immerse myself in a typical college life experience, like attending classes, going to practice, work study program, hanging out with friends, and attending fraternity parties. Life was great. Then football season came to an end. It was November and I found myself at a crossroad with extra time on my schedule. Also, friends, classmates, and teammates were all making plans to travel home for the Thanksgiving holiday. Me, I had purchased a round-trip ticket with a return date of mid-December, and I didn't really have a plan or money to return to Texas for a long weekend. I had attended a couple of meetings of the organization known as El Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, or MECHA, one of only 2 Latino associations at Penn at the time. The other one was ASELA. MECHA was planning on attending the East Coast Chicano Student Forum Conference hosted by Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, during the Thanksgiving break. The trip was free. MECHA was paying for the van to be used for transportation. The accommodations were provided by the host students. With no other plans or the means, I decided to attend. The conference consisted of workshops, events, and activities that catered to the Latino community, but more specifically, it provided a networking event on the East Coast for Latino students from Texas and California that could not travel home during the holiday. The conference even had an annual Texas versus California football game as one of the major activities. The conference was hosted every year by a different MECHA chapter in the Ivies and MIT. The conference also was well known for its networking parties held every night that led most to refer to the overall event as pachanga. Pachanga, that is a Spanish slang for large party. This MECHA road trip to Brown for pachanga was the start of my 4-year relationship with the organization, of which I served as vice president and president during my senior year. During these 4 years, I participated and organized multiple cultural events. There was a yearly event where I was the main cook, preparing over 200 Mexican plate dinners from scratch. Definitely one of my fondest memories is when Penn hosted Pachanga in 1991. It was a lot of hard work, fundraising, and organizing the event, but that just made it more memorable. At Penn, MECHA became my home away from home, where I interacted and became good friends with many students who looked like me, and one of the main reasons why I never experienced homesickness. Today, I think back on how the simple fact that I had nowhere to go that Thanksgiving, and the realization for the first time that I was different from most students at Penn without the means to travel home during school, holidays, and breaks. That led to joining a small but great organization and meeting a great group of individuals with similar backgrounds and the same financial challenges. On that road trip 31 years ago, not only did I find my community, but any doubt of not belonging at Penn just vanished. After changing my major 3 times, and that is another topic for a different forum, I ultimately found my calling in civil engineering with a concentration in structural design. Civil engineering was the smallest discipline in the engineering school, and in my junior and senior year, our classes were only 4 to 6 students. The relationships I've developed with a couple of my professors and their mentoring prepared me very well for the next chapter. They both had industry and academia backgrounds and honestly explained what to expect upon graduation. The real-life work tackled in class impressed prospective employers during the interviews and led to multiple offers of employment. However, it was their teaching philosophy that Penn educated students to be leaders and not solely workers that have guided me for the last 27 years as a professional and in becoming a very successful executive. This philosophy resonated deeply with me and reminded me of the options that my parents provided me while in high school. I had another choice to make, except it was no longer deciding between choosing a trade or going to college. Now I had to decide if I was going to be a follower or a leader. Thanks to my parents and Penn, I chose to become a leader. Today, I find myself in a very fortunate position of what I call early retirement phase, meaning I have 2 high school kids, and the sole reason I'm still working is that my wife and I cannot relocate to our planned retirement location in Thailand until our youngest, graduates from high school in about 4 years. All of this was made possible thanks to my parents' brainwashing and their innate ability to convince me that I was invincible. And let's not forget their unwavering support that allowed me to attend Penn while leaving money on the table from other universities, something not easy to do as a first-gen low-income student. It is a human nature to every once in a while to doubt yourself, and that's okay, because most of the time we cannot control that. We are human. However, as I tell my teenagers all the time, don't worry about what you cannot control. Only worry and do something about what you do control. My advice to you all, as you navigate through whatever phase of life you're currently dealing with, studies, career, whatever it might be, don't ever let others drive doubts and do your part, and don't ever doubt those seeking guidance and mentorship. Don't ever underestimate the power of your words. As first-gen low-income students, we have successfully navigated the system. We know very well the challenges and obstacles we have overcome. And I'm certain we also overcame doubters in our lives. But if we stumble, and it will happen, it is not the end. Get up, move forward, and make the best of the next opportunity. Take it from me. Somebody else's doubt led me to not apply to my dream college. But somehow, this poor kid from the barrio graduated as valedictorian from high school, chose to apply to Penn by pure chance, got accepted, and graduated. Those 4 years at Penn were the most formative of my life, and in reality, a dream come true. Attending Penn definitely made me who I am today, and it remains one of the best decisions I have ever made. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Raphael. That was so great. I resonated with so many parts of that. That just for the sake of time, I'm not going to talk about any of them, but just so many parts of it. Once again, just want to remind everyone, I see a lot of you are already doing this, but just like we welcome all comments and questions in the chat. Before I move on to our final storyteller, just want to say that our final storyteller will be followed up by a Q&A session. And if you would wish to remain anonymous when asking your question, feel free to pass on your question along to Toys in a private message. And so last but not least, we have Yulia Zubat. She is a 2006 graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences, where she majored in political science. She is a coordinator for school transformation and the manager of restorative communities at the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. She joins us from LA.
Thank you so much for that. I am so excited to be here with you all and share some space, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my story as quickly as I can, since I know we're running a little low on time. And it took a bit of a little more of a maybe poetic approach to the assignment and the questions. So bear with me if the story does not sound as linear or as neat as maybe it could be. So it was just really great to hear from everyone else. And I'll go ahead and just jump right in. So I'm so excited, and I want to thank my fellow alumni, the wider Penn community, and all of our guests on the call from all around the world, I'm sure. And also I really want to thank especially the great beloved city of Philadelphia. I wish I was actually in Philadelphia right now for homecoming, to be honest with you. And I just want to give Philly a massive shout out from the West Coast. For showing us really this week that, last week, I should say, what beautiful things continue to happen in the city of Philadelphia. So my name is, let me get some water. All right, I might get a little emotional, so like I said, bear with me, but my name is Yulia Zubat, and thank you so much for pronouncing my name so effortlessly. That was beautiful. And, I watched President Gutman's video on the FGLI website, as the cool kids like to call it, right? She said, I am first, and she shared why she is first. And it made me think about the fact that, I'm the first in my family to live and be educated on American soil, the first to graduate from an Ivy League institution that I didn't even know existed until my senior year of high school. And the first to obtain a master's in education in the United States of America among my family, which is actually spread out all over the world. I am the daughter of a government accountant and a factory manager from the former Yugoslavia. And I am the descendant of generations of farmers and thinkers and leaders, though they may not have been formal leaders, and even a few late freedom fighters from the lands that are known as the Balkans. A word derived, as you may know, from two words, the word blood and the word honey. As an educator and a restorative justice practitioner, and as a lifelong activist, I'm honored to share a bit about my journey as someone who is working in the beautiful, sometimes thankless, always essential field of education. In my work, I have the longest title ever, by the way, and I basically do restorative communities work in our schools, our schools here in Los Angeles. And what that means is that we work to implement restorative practices and social-emotional learning at all levels in some of our highest needs schools in 3 neighborhoods in my city: Watts, South Los Angeles, South Central, and Boyle Heights. So the work that I do is very much my life's mission, and it's actually very much something that started at Penn. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about my Penn journey. I came to Penn in August 2001 from LAX, dragging 2 suitcases, not knowing anyone. My family could not afford to fly across the country with me or take me to IKEA or the Penn bookstore and furnish my dorm room. My family didn't know the rites and the rituals of an American Ivy League education. My parents did know the values that they had painstakingly instilled and set me off with, a deep love of learning and a love for people of all backgrounds and walks of life. In those first few weeks of 2001, I actually started in 2001, and I ended up taking a semester off from Penn and graduating in 2006. So my preferred year is 05, since all the homies are in 05, but there's a lot of amazing people in 06. So just so you know, I love that at Penn, you can actually have a preferred year. And, you know, in those first weeks of 2001, I witnessed the shattering impact of 9/11 on my generation. I cried with classmates in Baby Quad and on College Green, holding candles in hands without saying a word. I argued with dorm mates who could not see the danger of retaliatory war. To this day, I am in touch with the friends who held me, who cried with me, and most of all laughed with me in those years of growth, of privilege, of struggle, of boundless youth and possibility. At Penn, I explored interdisciplinary learning, and I made lifelong friendships that I hold very dear. I learned about the world beyond my imagination, and perhaps most significantly, I was profoundly touched by the wisdom of Black people in Philadelphia and at Penn. Growing up in Italy from the age of 8 to 12, where I escaped as a refugee from Bosnia, I received a very skewed image of African history, and I had no exposure to African American history. I remember writing a poem in Italian during those years about the strange dynamics that I noticed between Europeans and Africans in my town of Pula in southern Sardinia, Italy, especially on the bus. The poem was entitled People Are Strange, and it's still imprinted in my memory. I will read you a line in Italian and then translate. La gente è strana quando sei straniero, quando sei un nero, quando cerchi di essere sincero. That means people are strange when you're a foreigner, when you're Black, when you try to be honest, and so on, it went on. This opening reflected how I saw my own marginalization as a refugee connected to that of the African men that I was told not to interact with on the bus in Italy. While I attended a beautifully diverse and very high poverty high school in California, it wasn't until my college years that I began to unpack my early encounters with the racism and the classism of Europeans and the racism of white people more broadly. In Philadelphia, the stories steeped in the city's streets allowed me to connect the stories of my youth with the powerful history of Black genius, ingenuity, and resilience. The human connections and friendships that I forged allow me to look beyond theories in textbooks and see the human eyes in front of me, to learn from the voices of Black and Brown and Indigenous and Asian and mixed, et cetera, organizers on campus. Some of you know me well, and you know that I was one of maybe 5 Bosnian American students at the University of Pennsylvania in the early 2000s. We found each other because we recognized each other's names on long rosters in, that one of my friends actually used to look at in the admissions office where she worked as a student, looking for Balkan names, looking for names that looked familiar, that sound like home. And those of you who know me know that I'm a survivor of a brutal war and genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the early to mid 90s. And in fact, another survivor, at least, is on this call, a good friend of mine, and another Penn alumni. I was 7 years old when that war started. My first grade was interrupted when our school closed in April of 1992. And in the urban setting of Mostar, my city, we went from the classroom to the basement overnight. I turned 8 years old before escaping to nearby Italy in early 1992. I know intimately what it means to be a child who has to hide in the basement night after night as your city is bombed. I know what it means to run for your life as you hear shelling around you. I know what it means to lose the home that you loved as a refugee abroad. I know what it means to face violence. It was the solidarity of our ethnically diverse family, our neighbors, most importantly, the solidarity of strangers that saved my family's life. The story is one that Penn admissions officers read when I applied decades ago, urged by my incredible teachers at Marshall Fundamental in Pasadena, California. And the story is one of violence and resilience that many have seen on television screens, whether in 1993 or in 2020, whether in Bosnia or in Armenia or Azerbaijan. And it is the single story of my country, personally, my people, that I saw reflected everywhere and anywhere growing up for years and years. When your country is one line in the history textbook, maybe two, you know what that feels like. Today, though, I want to tell you a little bit of a different story in the few minutes I have left. And it was at Penn that I began to learn how to prioritize healing and activism. It was then that I chose not to feel helpless. I actually wrote my undergrad thesis on Serb guilt and genocide denial, traveling to the Library of Congress to do research in the Slavic room, often crying on the train on my way back home to West Philly. Grateful for the community that I had in Philly that held me and understood me through those years of incredible intellectual growth and curiosity, many triumphs, and also some real painful struggles. In my political science classes, I did not feel seen, and I definitely was not understood. I remember so many faces turning around in large lecture rooms when I spoke with an accent they could not place. I remember the stoic faces of my white male classmates when they debated concepts of war and peace with that cold, familiar intellectual indifference. So it was the GIC, the Greenfield Intercultural Center, that became my home away from home, where I felt seen. My RA in the Living Cultures floor, my first year at Penn, told me, you have to take PACE. And that course on cultural awareness that I took in the spring of my first year at Penn, not even knowing it was a graduate course, became my sacred space to learn and to grow, to feel seen and valued. The powerful activism of the United Minorities Council became my opportunity to contribute, to act in conscience towards preserving affirmative action, passing a very basic diversity requirement that we were asking for in those years, and generally widening the common view, even among Penn leaders, of who belonged and who belongs today at Penn. It was at the GIC that I learned from my mentors, especially the late Tiffany Anderson and my dear Valerie DeCruz and Sean Vereen, as well as my amazing peers who taught me to follow the lead of students of color, to listen to those who knew what the institution was capable of providing to marginalized students. I still remember one of my dear friends, Carlos, walking out of a meeting with the president of the University of Pennsylvania and telling me they really don't see us as students. And I'm proud that our vision of inclusion continued and that it continues to this day, and that not only that, but it's been very much broadened. And the Race Dialogue Project, which was an organization I co-founded with a friend, Sarah Pergamian, continues to exist. I'm most proud that this vision has been broadened, like I said, by our current students who now proudly share their stories of coming from low-income working class families, from what I like to lovingly call the salt of the earth. In her brilliant TED Talk from 11 years ago, The Danger of a Single Story, the amazing writer Adichi concluded her remarks by asking us, what if my roommate knew a more complete picture of Nigeria, right? Instead of asking me ridiculous questions. So today I want you to know a more complete and a more human picture of what was called Yugoslavia, or what is now Bosnia or Croatia or Serbia, etc., and who I am as your classmate, your friend, your neighbor, as a Bosnian American woman working for peace, justice, and equity in Los Angeles, California, and beyond. I want you to know I grew up surrounded by 2 alphabets, reading books and listening to music in 3, then 4 and more languages. And I want you to know my uncle's name is Slobodan, but that is nothing like the other Slobodan you know. That this name actually means free man. And it was chosen by my family as a symbol of our very real fight against fascism in World War II. And I want you to know that my uncle worked for the Red Cross during the war, even though he was accused of being a war criminal. I want you to know he studied at 2 universities and that he now lives in Sweden with 2 multilingual sons, and that he loves to send me videos of spiritual guidance, especially of Sadhguru from India. And last but not least, I just, I wish you could know the beautiful scent of flowers in the air when spring comes to the Balkans. And the dynamic brilliance of my mixed family of proud Yugoslavs, some of them communists, who resisted the Nazis in their towns and their villages. And that's what it means for them to be a socialist or a communist. My so-called mixed family, of Serb Orthodox, Croat, Catholic, Muslim Bosniak, French Bosnian, Italian Bosnian, Swedish Bosnian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and my indigenous Mexican partner in California, and that side of my family. Most of the time, we simply call ourselves, among ourselves, Nashi, which in my language means ours. And I want you to know there's nothing to be afraid of. We're here, we're among you, our humanity is just like yours. Even if our bank accounts have less zeros than yours or your family's. And even if our stories seem so different and so distant, I want you to know there's nothing to be ashamed of if you too come from poverty. Remember always that wisdom, right, is much greater than silver and gold. So I apologize for going over time, and I want to just close by saying that your story matters, all of you listening, more than you know, more than you may believe in this moment, despite all of the insecurity we may sometimes feel deep down in our hearts. Remember that sharing your story enables you to heal, and then it enables others to soar. And I hope and trust that if we wish, we will meet in person sometime soon over a meal and a drink, perhaps in Philadelphia, and we will find much to talk and laugh about. And hvala što ste me poslušali. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Julia. I just appreciate it so much. I'm getting emotional. And so, yeah, just thank you. I'm going to try and move on to some prepared remarks that I have really quickly in an effort not to cry. I just want to thank all of you so much for, joining us, from Cindy to Raphael to Julia. Just such amazing stories tonight. I've just been so blessed to hear from you all. I've resonated with so much of your stories, but I've also seen new FGLI experiences that are much different from mine and so many of your stories as well. As FGLI alumni, we share many similarities, but we are all also unique in our individuality, and that's what makes our FGLI community stronger and also our wider Penn community stronger. So just thank you so much for just highlighting that, for bringing that to the table. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Andrea Al-Haddadi Patton. Sorry, I might have gotten that last name wrong. The Associate Director of Development and Alumni Relations within VPOL here at the university.
Hi, everyone. Ania, you got it right. So thank you. You actually got the more difficult of my 2 last names perfect. So that is a rarity. Usually Patton is what people are able to pronounce. But I am just so inspired. It is, as a staff member who helped put this program together, it is always wonderful to realize how much passion you can find in your job. And it has been such a gift for me and the other members of the team to hear the stories of our alumni who've spoken today, and just get a glimpse into the many different FGLI stories that exist at Penn. And I hope that these have inspired you to share your story as you heard the call to actions from all our speakers. So I want to invite anyone who has any questions to please feel free to drop them in the chat. And while you do that, the official program has ended, but our speakers are staying on for 10 to 15 minutes, and we will continue to leave the Zoom space open even after Q&A in case anybody wants to connect. But while I give people a chance to drop questions potentially in the chat, just since we are going off such a powerful last story, Julia, I would love to ask you a question. It starts with really a thank you for reminding all of us to take pride in our story of origin. You told yours with such passion. What advice do you have for young people, or really, any alumni here with us tonight who straddle two or more worlds, whose stories are intersectional? How do we encourage them to brace the sum of their parts and makes them whole?
Yeah, that's a powerful question, and I think that there's almost like two parts that I'm thinking about right now. Part of it is like, how do you do your own work of having, really a massive amount of self-compassion for yourself. And I think that's a very important value, honestly. Compassion is like my value of 2020, and then self-compassion on top of that is I think really important. Because, as you're trying to work through your many identities, and identity shifts, even, as an educator, I'm learning much more about identity development, and it shifts daily for us sometimes, right? Our identity, like when the Dodgers win, through and through, right? Like when I'm in Philly, right? Like that's like, I feel like my soul is in that city, like I listen to the Roots and I'm just like at home. I don't know what just happened, like. And so all of those identities, I think, are valid and beautiful. And I think that it's really about learning how to tell those stories that move you and painting the image for others. Like, that's one thing actually I really appreciated the advice to listen to the TED Talk, right? The Danger of a Single Story. And I hadn't heard it in years. And I still clearly remembered it. But there were so many details in listening to it again that really helped me to tell my own story, actually following a similar format, right? And about what do I want folks to know, right? About where I'm from and just the beauty of that, kind of humanity. And then the other piece is like, how do you share that in a public sphere where you may be, in a setting with folks you don't know, who are coming from different places, and also in potentially a professional setting, right? But I think it's important to feel okay with bringing our whole selves to our work. We're bringing our whole selves to Penn alumni events. I went to a few Penn alumni events in LA when I was an early grad. And I mean, come on, this stuff isn't like Beverly Hills or something. Like, what is this? Like, I don't need that in my life, right? So let's create a different kind of Penn gathering, right? Has always been, and maybe sometimes I do want the fancy thing, right? The kinds of conversations that I'm interested in are conversations where people want to be authentic, people want to be themselves, and they're not just, pretending. And my sleeping doggy is literally like my self-care right here, is this dog and all the love she gives every day. So I don't know if I answered the question at all, but thanks for asking it. It was a great question.
I also rely on my dog, my puppy. Anyone who works with me or gets a chat with me knows that Lacey serves that for me. Thank you so much. I do want to point people to the chat. There's been some wonderful resources dropped in the chat for those who want to witness more narratives of Penn Figley experience on the Penn First Plus website. We've also had a couple of our speakers and staff include their emails in case you want to learn more opportunities about staying engaged or learning more about how you can support the programs that we've talked about and supporting students. We did get a question, and Cindy, I'll ask you, but Julia and Rafael, if you have a response, please also feel free to chime in. And that is, what advice or insight would you like to give to non-FGLI students in relating to you or their FGLI peers?
Yeah, I think FGLI is just a part of our identity, and we, coming from that background and, upbringing, we all need to embrace that. As I mentioned earlier, that can be your strength, but we're so much more than that, right? So I am a mom with 2 kids, one of them is a Penn right now. And, I'm a wife and I'm a professional with 25 plus years of experience. I am fintech executive, also in the process of learning about blockchain, emerging technology. I'm a VC investor. There are just so many identity that encompass a person. And I continue to draw on my FGLI experience as I move through life and move from one role to another, because FGLI continue to be a core part of who I am. And I think a lot of students that I've worked with, sometimes as they go through these life changes, what I call a situation that allow you to, or require you to be code switching. As you move from high school to college, from college to graduate school, or to be the first professional in life, to be, much more experienced in your field, you are going through a journey of code switching, and you will think, being flexible, adaptable, being resourceful, the key building blocks that I talked about before, that not only applies to FGLI students, but also for non-FGLI.
Cindy,
Self-care.
Yeah, you're back.
Self-care, and I also do think that mental health it's really important. It's one of the key challenges that many FGLI students, are struggling with or have to deal with, especially this year. At Right First, we published 100 plus blogs from FGLI students about how they've been impacted by pandemic. And you see a lot of pain, you see a lot of challenges, you see also story of, inspiration and powerful journey that they're going through. So I think this is just part of the journey that we had to go through, and it helps build who we are today.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Yep.
So we have one more question, and before I ask it, I would love to also put in a plug for a online community that exists for FGLI students at Penn that is run under the Greenfield Intercultural Center and FGLI Program, and that is Penn Flash. It is a online platform for any alumni who want to provide knowledge sharing and community. We kind of see it as our digital extended family network for the Greenfield Intercultural Center and the FGLI program. But you can visit it by going to mentoring.upenn.edu. And we will also drop a website with more information in the chat if you want to learn more about it. A website for alumni to learn a little bit more if you'd like to create a profile and be able to share your story and connect with students and support them in this way. And so the last question, which actually we have someone, I can't even remember who asked it because there were so many more people responding saying, I feel the same way, and it's about imposter syndrome. And so Rafael, I'll ask you, how do you balance the narrative of faking it till you make it, right? That mentality of faking it till you make it with owning your story, And how do you live in both of those spaces, or do you not?
Oh, that's an excellent question, Andrea. Thanks for asking. I would have to say that, one thing that I have done ever since, I went to Penn, and then after I graduated, in my professional career, and even when I was at Penn, I just was who I was. I did not keep secret where I came from. It was no secret that I didn't come from money. And actually, some of my roommates actually were people that would pay the full tuition, with a check. And then in the workforce, who I am today, it was never a secret. And what made me, that I'm very proud of my humble beginnings. Let's put it that way. I mean, this is who made me. Today, for example, I for the past, I don't know how many years, I have interviewed for Penn. I go to all the Houston, events that the Houston Penn Club has, and I am who I am, and my kids, even though we live in a very well-to-do neighborhood, they know where they came from, and they never forget their roots. They never, they have not let them forget who their grandparents are, where it all started. And again, it's more of an inspiration so they don't forget their roots, and that they have to be proud and own where they came from. So when it comes to an imposter, I don't put a second face. I am who I am. If the conversation turns into being first gen, low income when I was at Penn, it is what it is. If people don't accept me, I don't look for them, they just move on, right? So and I found out, actually, believe it or not, that the more truthful you are to yourself and to others around you, you'll be more accepted than people give them credit for. I think a lot of people try to maneuver, in society without realizing that people will accept you if you're truthful to yourself.
Thank you for that, Rafael. If I could add one quick thing, I totally agree. And one thing I did at Penn too, I was always truthful about why I was there, why I was there, my goals, that I was not there to make millions. That was not my mission at Penn. And that's okay, and I actually think that we need to re-envision what success is in our country, right? Maybe it's not the millions that the Wharton School promises. Maybe for some it is, right? Maybe some want to start businesses and employ hundreds and thousands of people. It's a beautiful thing too. But for me, as an educator, right, as someone who studied political science, et cetera, my goals are just as big and beautiful, as dollar signs. So, and I will tell you that I had a lot of friends actually who came from a lot of money. A lot of wealthy friends from Latin America, especially when I was homies with Latin Americans. Good people. There are good people all over the world, no matter how much money they've got in the bank and no matter what the history of their ancestors is, So we do have to look at the human in front of us.
Thank you so much to you both. Cindy, do you want to top us off with any insights?
No, I just say it's so true. I think success is how you define it, and you have to bring your whole self, not only to the school, if you're a student, but to your work and to all aspects of your life. I always tell the students that I work with, you are unique. There's no other you, and you are enough. So along the way, of course, you need to ask for help, and nobody can achieve, their success. Not the President of the United States, not the CEO of Fortune 500 company, can do it all by himself or herself. So don't be afraid to ask for help. That is the secret ingredients. That's the way to activate all the attributes that you have. And, and along the way, we all have the obligation to reach back and help somebody else. We all have the power to do so as well. So if you're a student, you can help the FGLI high school students to achieve the higher education. If you're alum, you can post summer internship and full-time positions and help another Penn FGLI students, you can support this incredible team that we have at Penn, the GIC team, the Penn First Plus team. Connect through Penn Flash. The link is posted here. And, the incredible team here just launched a new initiative called Penn Flash Project. So allow alumni who are looking for extra help from FGLI students, you can post 2 to 4 week, assignments to allow students to have real life project that they can help you with, and give them an opportunity, and give you and your firm an opportunity to get to know these students. They are the future pipeline of this country. And, by nurturing the next generation, we all will be in this together to really lift each other up. So I encourage everyone to, join in, help out, and answer the call.
Thank you, Cindy. And speaking of nurturing the next generation, Ania, do you have any advice for any FGLI students who are applying to college? Perhaps some of us, we know those students, and what kind of guidance could we provide for them?
I guess I'm trying to think through this. I guess with students, particularly high school students that are looking at some of the, if you want to call it more prestigious, I put some quotations around that word, more prestigious universities that don't believe that they can necessarily do it. Drawing from Raphael's story just, a little bit, just like really pushing them to get there, even if they don't think they have a chance in the world, really just pushing them to really pursue it. I'll tell you guys just a very brief story. The first time someone mentioned a Rhodes Scholarship to me, they asked me what I wanted to do after school, and I said, oh, I wanted to stay in Philadelphia, work for a local nonprofit. And they said, well, you're so bright, you're thinking so small, you could go to England and go to school, become a Rhodes Scholar. And I said back to my academic advisor, I would never want to do that. You're crazy. And now I'm joining you all tonight at 1:20 a.m. from Oxford, England. And so obviously she wasn't that crazy. And so really just, thinking through, really pushing kids to think through bigger than what they know. I know that sounds very simple, but it really is a key to a lot of this work.
I hope you caught all the people cheering in their tiny little...
I did.
Totally. We gotta demystify these things, right? Like, this is nothing exotic. My least favorite word in the English language, exotic. Lots of people at Penn love to call us that when we're foreign, Not good. I hope they don't say it anymore. I'm sure they don't.
Well, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in, to our panelists and amazing MC. Based on the chat session alone, I think we are all blown away and deeply moved by the stories you shared, and feel like we all are leaving with a call to action of how we can go and create more spaces for FGLI students, and how storytelling is such a big part of that, and just owning our story and sharing it proudly, and reflecting back on the narratives that maybe are being created for us, or the ones that we start sharing, but how that can evolve, and how we need to ensure we're not erasing people from it. There's been a lot of different comments in the chat that I just want to essentially do a little housekeeping before this ends. So we will be in the next couple of days sending an email to everyone with the recording of this program, as well as links to all the different resources, whether it's newsletters, the Penn Flash online community you can join. The University of Pennsylvania is doing so many incredible things. I know there's been a lot of people who have said, I was at Penn in the 80s or 90s, and I was first gen, and none of this existed. If you are unfamiliar with all the resources that exist, if phrases like FGLI or Penn First Plus are not something that you are familiar with, I encourage you to click the links in the email we send you and learn just how much this institution is doing to support this community. But the most important part about these resources is having alumni like you involved and sharing your own story and paving the way for them. So thank you again. We are going to leave this Zoom room open for a few minutes longer in case anybody else wants to chat, wants to ask something, you know, with their speaker on. But thank you. What a great way to kick off homecoming week for Penn.
Thank you, Andrea. I just also want to say a quick note. So very excited about all of our speakers today. Thank you, all of our storytellers. Thank you, Ania. Thank you, Julia, Cindy, and Rafael. Wish we could stay here for another hour and just keep hearing more about you all. I actually got really emotional. I had to turn off my camera a few times. I don't know how many of you all had this experience, but it's not, you know, it's not sadness. It's tears of joy and tears of, you know, we're doing this. So very grateful that we have this space to share together as a community. And like Andrea said, it doesn't end here. The work in our community will keep growing. And we hope that you will answer that call when we send that email. Once again, my name is Lisette Garza. I am the director of Penn First Plus Alumni and Career Resources Initiatives. So very, very happy to work with many of you already. Looking forward to forging new relationships with a lot of you here tonight. I just wanted to you know, make these few remarks just to show my face and let you